you're doing all okay. It's been a long summer, a very long, but it's okay because soon enough is going to begin. I don't know whether my Wi-Fi looks like it's horrendous now. I mean, this is going to be a crazy, probably first episode that we've done. I have no idea if this is going to work. I mean, it feels like forever since we signed off after talking about the NFL draft and stuff in April. Sky, Johnny, I hope you've had a good summer so far. I mean, we had a massive heat wave. It's now gone absolutely horrible outside in the last few days. But there's one thing for certain. I think, Johnny, we are all looking forward to the NFL season beginning again.
Mate, everything's grim at the moment, isn't it? The weather, your Wi-Fi, it's just building up. We're just getting ready for September. Cannot wait. I'm finally back in the zone after watching a bit of preseason football last week. Bit more of that to come this week. Looking forward to, but yeah, it's the competitive games that we can't wait to get started. So yeah, really looking forward to digging a bit deeper and getting back into the zone of just talking non-stop football for 3-4 months of the year.
I feel like I've been a bit unplugged recently, Sky. Me and you have been touring around London, doing all sorts of events that a lot of people have been watching on our social media channels. Our YouTube viewership has skyrocketed. It's probably going to skyrocket down once they see this first episode, see all the ifs, buts, and maybes about the recording and the hilarity and the comical value, the knowledge maybe. I feel like I've been a bit unplugged with the NFL. Are you good to go? The season start back up again?
Yeah, I think good to go. Done a few fantasy mock drafts. Like you said, we've had a few events. I feel like as soon as August 1st rolls around, and obviously, as Johnny mentioned, we've had that Hall of Fame game. Jets doing what they traditionally do, obviously starting strong. So that was nice to see. But yeah, I think I'm ready. Looking forward to September now.
Yes. I mean, yeah, me as well. I mean, it's just coming around so quickly. And today we're going to be doing our first of our divisional reviews that we're doing. It's going to be the AFC and the NFC North that we're starting off with today. I suppose the AFC North is where we start with. I'll go to Sky to begin with. We talk about his 4 teams, some of the acquisitions, how they're going to do in the season. Maybe a bit quick because we want to get both divisions in within a nice amount of time for you, and I hope you do enjoy it as well. So we'll begin with straight away. I mean, Sky, do you want to pick the team that you want to start with? I suppose that's fair, rather than just giving you a team.
Yeah, I feel like I'll go for the obvious one, and I don't know. Actually, I've said the obvious one. I'd like to start with the Ravens. I think, from when I've looked at the AFC North, nobody has won it 3 years in a row since the Steelers won it 4 years from 94 to 97. So there's been a change in champion every 2 years. I think everyone's talking the Bengals up, but this Ravens offense is sort of bound to open up with getting Aguilar, OBJ. Obviously, they drafted Zay Flowers. They've got Orlando Brown signed on the O-line. So I think even though that run game is still going to be a committee as always, I think with change offensive coordinator as well, like the Ravens are really primed to have a good year. So I'm excited to see how Lamar does. Excited to see a bounce back for Mark Andrews, and really sold on him having a good 2023 season.
That's the first slip up of NFL being a bit unplugged, mate. Orlando Brown did play for the Ravens. He's actually just signed for the Bengals. It's Ronnie Stanley. I mean, that's point number one to Sky for the summer of NFL and all these movements. I've been doing the research. There were so many players. I was like, I didn't know he was there. I'm sure he was on.
Forgot he'd gone. At least I got the receivers right. They have got Aguilar, OBJ, and Zay Flowers, right?
Yeah.
That's 3 out of 4.
So. And Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman? Oh, God, I don't even know.
Yeah, Duvernay's probably still around. Devin Duvernay. Yeah, with the linemen, they all start to, they're all 6'5" plus. As long as they do their job, I'm sure, John Harbaugh will be happy, right? So, we'll see how Orlando gets on.
The Ravens have made a fair few moves this offseason. Their draft was definitely good. They went the exact way that we thought they were going to go. We're going with wide receiver in the first round, and that's with Zay Flowers. Like I said, a lot of debate whether that was the wide receiver they should have taken. I mean, they were in the mix at that time where a lot of wide receivers were going. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. And really, Johnny, what we really hope for is a full season of Lamar, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I'm looking forward to seeing most from the Ravens is, the change and evolution of Lamar. Obviously, the change of coordinators. So we're perhaps going from a run first offense to, a bit more of a pass heavy scheme. They brought in obviously a lot of noise about Odell, and you can kind of harp on about the money, the injury issues, the age. But he's undoubtedly on his day one of the best receivers in the NFL. So I'm hoping he can step up and prove that with Lamar. The potential for a huge partnership is really there between those two, two great characters of the NFL. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. This offense, Lamar is possibly my favorite, athlete to watch on his day when he, really gets into the zone, not just as a runner, but we've seen time and time again that he's an able passer, and I'm hoping to see a little bit more of that this year. Like we say, that the young receivers, obviously Bateman from last year, Zay Flowers they brought in this year, I'm really looking forward to seeing. And yeah, I think it's positive from the Ravens. They've been, probably the most in the headlines team in this AFC North this offseason. So yeah, let's hope they can back up the noise with a good 2023.
You must agree, he's gone quiet.
I suppose we'll stick on with you, Johnny, talking about the next team. Or did I have a massive lag there? That's okay. That's fine. We'll move on to the whatever team you'd like to speak about next, Johnny. Whether it be the Bengals, my Steelers, or possibly the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at the team, I think this division is possibly one of the most. I mean, you can say it about anyone, but I really do think the AFC North can be one of the most competitive in 2023. And I think the team that has made the most improvements this offseason is your Steelers, and I think they really are. The team to watch in the division, not just because I think they've been placed as an underdog in. Any sort of betting, stakes for to win the division. But they have a second-year quarterback who showed signs that he can potentially be a solid NFL starter. Went on a good streak last year towards the end of the year, so something to build on for this year. And I think it was obviously a difficult year moving on from Big Ben in 2022, but they were an incredibly resilient team, dealt with a lot of injuries to some of the big stars. They've been able to keep those together and build on those with a terrific bit of recruitment in the draft and in free agency. So yeah, this is looking like a really strong young really attacking side. I love the who they've been, they tied down, obviously, Highsmith this year. Really liked him last year. He had a bit of a breakout, didn't he? And, him alongside TJ Watts makes, and that, the defense just goes somewhere, really. I think Cam Sutton's might be a big loss in the secondary, but yeah, easily replaceable. And yeah, on offense, like you said, one of the young emerging talents across wide receiver. They've got a lot of young names who we're really looking forward to seeing. A completely revitalized offensive line, and we know the struggles that that line has had over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping that they can find their feet and really get that run game back on, a solid front, because they have the potential there. So I think the pieces are all there, and I'm just looking forward to seeing improvements from your team. I think, yeah, like I've said, they've got an exciting roster to build on, and there's all the hallmarks for a decent season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more as a Steelers fan. But I mean, I've got a bit of a better setup than I maybe did last season with the Franchise Tag podcast. I've got a certain Cam Hayward up now, certain Troy Polamalu, and a certain Najee Harris all in my little bit. And also, actually, right next to me, which is not exactly, it doesn't look great, but behind all this bubble wrap is a very, very new, about double the size TV that I have right now that's waiting to go on my wall, which I'm very much looking forward to watching a lot of NFL and a lot of Steelers football on next season. But yeah, we're waiting on that for a few weeks until we get that up and going. That and FIFA, I suppose, is going to be the hallmark of this new TV, which I'm sure my partner will be ecstatic about. But yeah, I'll put my 50p in over Sky Sports over the Steelers due to being a Steelers fan. Yeah, I think we are sneakily, weirdly, an underdog. Maybe not an underdog for the Super Bowl, but we are an underdog to actually do well in this division this year. I think this is the first season for me in the last few years where we've really addressed our weaknesses. I mean, we've had a few seasons where I know what our weaknesses are, but I don't believe really we have addressed it properly and informatively. This year, we've gone out and got Broderick Jones. We've got Joey Porter in the draft. We've got a decent backup tight end, Darnell Washington. We have Keanu Benton, who got drafted as defensive tackle as well to be that cover underneath of Cam Hayward. We went out and got Patrick Peterson. Yes, there has been some losses, Cam Sutton. But then we also re-signed Alex Highsmith, who in the first 4 weeks of last year led the league with sacks because TJ Watt wasn't there. They said that maybe he wouldn't be as be able to perform at a high level, and he did. He performed at a fantastic level across the league. It is all down to Kenny Pickett. And as awful that is for a quarterback that it's not a rookie anymore, it's going to be his first year, but let's be honest, it's going to be his first full season. He's not going to be coming halfway through the season like he did last season with Mitch Trubisky starting for a good portion of the season to begin with. He can really make a hallmark and a stamp on this team and have a full season of making connections with Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, and also getting this offensive line more improved is only going to help Najee Harris, who again is in a bit of a prove it year, really. And a lot of running backs, hopefully with the right attitude, and a lot of players in every position, actually, to be honest with you, with the right attitude, are going to have prove it years this year. There's a few players who do stick out in my mind that we'll go into probably throughout divisions as we're talking about these with the build up to the NFL. But yeah, we've really got a chance this year to put some people in their place. A lot of people last year were like halfway through the year, the first time you're going to go under 500. Guess what? We were still 500. You know, we really are. I think a lot more of a top team than people realize. I'm not going to say, you know, we're in the chase with Eagles and the Chiefs and the Bengals. I don't believe that at all. But I think we're very much underestimated by a lot of teams. The problem is every other team is getting better around us. You know, we don't have as many. There's not as many weak teams today in the NFL as there was week one last year. And that's where it's going to be hard for the Steelers because we need to get onto that next level. And certainly Kenny Pickett needs to push on to that next level. So, Sky, I'll move back on to you. I mean, you've got the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals to choose from here, man. I mean, you could talk about Orlando Browns, Cincinnati Bengals, or Deshaun Watson's.
Too scarred about Brown after realizing he's gone from Ravens, Chiefs, and now Bengals. So I'll go with the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
How you feeling about them?
I think it's a really intriguing season for them because I know Deshaun Watson before everything. He was a top 5 quarterback, and I'm really curious to see how he is this season. I mean, if he can get to even, I'd say 60-70% of his potential, I think. With how good Nick Chubb is, obviously we saw he's had a lot of love, right? He was leading the league in what I think rushing touchdowns, offensive player of the year honors, fantasy football, everyone's all over him. Kareem Hunt is obviously gone elsewhere, so he's literally the main guy on that offense. But like even in the air, they've obviously, as Johnny will know, they've got Elijah Moore over from the Jets, and he had a really good first year in New York. He dropped off touchdown-wise last year, but still had similar yardage. They've got Amari Cooper, Peoples-Jones. I'm not saying the Browns are going to be a playoff team, but I just think they're an intrigue one where you'll see many different previews of people putting them as maybe anywhere from like 5 wins to sneak into a wildcard spot. And I think all of that falls onto how Watson plays. So I'm really interested to see how that unfolds. I couldn't tell you where I still would say them and the Steelers are fighting for third. But yeah, I'm just intrigued to see how that sort of plans out. It could either sort of all blow up in their face, or I think they could have a really good bounce back year, but who knows?
I mean, that's one of the biggest things I'll agree with you straight off the bat is I've said this a million times on this podcast, and I say it a million times since now. I'm guaranteed to say it a million more times on this podcast. NFL is such recency bias, and we completely forget, all right, he had a year off. Well, a year off and some, with also other things involving Deshaun Watson. But when Deshaun Watson was playing his height in a really poor Texans team, like I think way poorer than this Browns team is, he was a top 5 quarterback. He was elite. He was the next big thing. Now, if he bounces back onto that, he could be that again. Do you agree with that, John? I mean, I don't get. I think it's obviously because he's been a very bad person in real life, but people are not wanting to support Deshaun Watson. I'm not saying that I want to support Deshaun Watson at all, but we've got to give his playing credit for what he's done so far in the NFL at still such a young age.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's such a polarizing figure for everything that surrounds him, which makes I don't know. It's an interesting one because his emergence from his suspension was so mediocre. His play was very erratic, and there wasn't much to get exciting about that. And from a neutral and from, I suppose, yeah, I mean, the entire prospects of the Cleveland franchise, the regime is dependent on how Deshaun Watson performs because of how much they gave up for him. So, I mean, Kevin Stefanski, he may have led the Browns the first win in first playoff win in what, over 25 years, just a couple of seasons ago against the Steelers. He's probably the head coach with the most, or he may be on the hot seat the most. I'm trying to say that it's a really make or break year for him. Even though I think that fans will respect him, and regimes will respect him for what he's achieved, but they gave up so much to go after Deshaun Watson, and obviously he showed the Texans that he was, like you say, a top 5 quarterback in the league. But already this season, we've already had conversations about whether or not he's the guy. There's been a lot of noise. I mean, I'm not buying into it at this stage, but there's been a lot of noise around the new rookie Dorian Thompson Robinson, who was slightly impressive in the playoff win. I don't at all expect any sort of change this year, but yeah, it's a huge year for Deshaun Watson. He has to prove, he has to get that negative energy that's on his back off it with some stellar on-field performances. So I can't tell at this stage whether or not he is going to be a success because of that pressure, because of the negativity that surrounded him. But of course, he has the talent. He's got to nail down. And the Browns have got such an important year, I'd say, this year in finding the form, not just on offense but on defense as well. They were poor last year. They've got so many stars on this roster. But it really just hasn't worked out.
Dorian Thompson-Johnson.
I'm sure that's his.
DTR. I remember people keep saying DTR.
Are you talking about
Thompson Robinson? Yeah, that's it.
Are you talking about Donovan Peoples-Jones?
No. There's a new. So yeah.
This has gone right.
New rookie, a new name that's coming into the league. It's a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Yeah,
I thought that was the car from Back to the Future. That's what I thought you meant for a minute. I was like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. But you made some great points. I shall have to check out the Dorian. Cincinnati Bengals back to business as usual. They will be looking again to top division to go straight through to the playoffs again and to be in the hunt for the Super Bowl once again, Sky. But this year they're going to be about one or two really key players. They've lost both safeties to free agency. They've both gone. They did draft some guys, and they're hoping some guys will step up into that game. But are we expecting more or less the same for the Bengals this year as they've been producing every year, as Burrow is on track to, in his mind, try and take over that number 1 spot in the league over Pat Mahomes?
Yeah, obviously, and I think that's why he's pushing to play week 1, right? Even with this calf injury, obviously, in Jamar Chase say he'd rather him rest up, but I think he's probably reaching that point where Josh Allen was a couple of seasons ago, where he wants to outduel Patrick Mahomes. And I think the advantage for Joe Burrow is he's managed to do that in a couple of their head-to-heads already. So if he can get the Bengals to a Super Bowl, obviously that puts him in the conversation right up there with the best quarterbacks in the league. They've obviously still got one of the best trios of wide receivers in the league. Added the rookie running back to go with Mixon, deciding to stay because no one else wanted him. So I think it could be a decent running back duo going there. I just think I know touch upon again saying the reason I looked up that stat about how often it was that people and teams had won it back to back, because I feel like the AFC North is always changing. It's known historically for being such, defensive division, hard-fought division, and I think as talented as the Bengals are, it's going to be really tough. Like, we hear in all sports, when you win a division title or a Super Bowl once, to remotivate yourself to do that again, I think 3 years in a row could be a big ask for the Bengals. I don't think it'd be a point to where they'd miss out on the playoffs. But with 2 divisional games to start their season as well, they're really relying on Burrow to be healthy by week 1, because playing Cleveland and Baltimore back to back, if they don't have 2 good results, that can have huge implications come the end of the year as well, if it comes to sort of tiebreakers and stuff.
Yeah, it sure will, and they're going to be in the hunt. I still think, but I think you're very right about the AFC North. It can be so different year on year, and change up so much, and it also only takes one injury. It only takes one injury, and we don't want any players, top players, or any player, let alone top players in the NFL to get injured. But there's one injury, and anything can happen. That just as the Baltimore Ravens. They've been in with the clinch every year, and Lamar's got hurt, and they've seemed to have dropped off every year. I'm going to move on to the NFC North, because I think we all feel very much the same way about the Bengals. So I won't pass it on to Johnny just yet, but I will pass maybe on the NFC North to Johnny. So a division, obviously, with the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears. Well, I'd actually have 4 very interesting teams this year, in a division that is going to have a lot of viewers this year. So what team would you like to start off with talking about?
Yeah, mad off season for the NFC North teams. Obviously, a lot of noise for various reasons. I'll start with the Detroit Lions. The hunted have become the hunters. They are the favourites to win the division, which I can understand. I mean, they, in my eyes, they still have the biggest point to prove of any team in the division. Obviously, the Packers have a new quarterback. The Vikings, had a really good record last year, but can they back it up? And obviously the Bears with Fields. But yeah, I feel there's an expectation now on the Lions to be a playoff team and be very competitive, which, it's a team that is undoubtedly has a lot of up-and-coming talent across the roster. We've seen, how explosive some of the players on offense have been. Jared Goff stepped up last year. They've got a lot of young talent. They've addressed some of the needs on defense. So, yeah, I think that, for all we hear about, the grit of Detroit, I think they need to prove that they are winners this year. The Dan Campbell leave it all on the field, run through a wall for your teammates sort of mentality is, that's exactly what people play and love sport for. But that just needs to translate into, more effective, maybe game planning. I'm looking forward to, seeing some more of the play calling improve. Dan Campbell improving as a head coach, and yeah, I'm really excited by the Lions. They've done a lot of business that sort of gets you very excited for. You can throw questions at the position they drafted Jamal Gibbs. Very exciting player. They've addressed their secondary, gone out and spent a lot of money on doing that. That was their biggest weakness last year. With they have one or two. I think they were number 1 or 2 worst defense in the NFL last year. So they have a point to prove. And yeah, I'm backing him to do so, to be honest. I like the Lions. They're very similar, I feel, to the Jets. So yeah, I'll stick with them. And let's hope we see some positiveness in Detroit for once.
Sky, will the Lions roar, or will it just be a gentle purr?
They haven't won it since 1993, so I guess they're due the NFC North title, right?
They're very much due.
They're due one. I think arguably this division is probably one of the most wide open, because people talk about the Lions and the Bears, but they've been historically so bad, and it's been dominated by the Packers winning 8 of the last 12 NFC North titles. Vikings have thrown a couple in that, as much as people want to hype them up, there's always that concern, right, of can they actually do it?
Yeah.
But I think considering that the Lions went on an 8-2 run over their last 10 games last season, Goff had 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. I think he's still young as well, because he's been in the league for so long now. I think people still forget that he's 27, 28, and he's made a Super Bowl. And I think he gets a lot more criticism than he probably warrants. And I think with the weapons they've got and the running back situation that Johnny touched upon, I think adding Gibbs and Montgomery as that 1-2 punch is an upgrade over Williams and Swift. I think they're in a good position, and I would make them the favourites. It's just obviously where they haven't won it in 30 years, people are going to be like, is it going to happen? But I think if there's ever a year it's going to happen, then Dan Campbell has them in a position to do so.
He's just got to take the opportunity that sets his foot in front of him, doesn't he? Sky, I'll pass it back on to you. You got the Lions, the Vikings, or the Packers. Which one would you like to pick to talk about quickly?
I think I'll go with the Vikings. Because everyone now loves Kirk Cousins, right? We were talking before about the quarterback.
We were talking about it before, yeah.
I think it's really shone him in a good light and showed the work ethic that he puts into the quarterback position. I think we saw that him and, admittedly, as I said before, I'm only 4 episodes in, but it seems like him and Kevin O'Connell have a really good rapport in terms of that coach-quarterback relationship. And I think with the adversity he's had to come over, being drafted in that same year as RG3, and then winning that job in Washington, and then sort of everyone questioned, he can't do it in prime time, etc. He put up some big performances last year, and the big comeback win, Thanksgiving win over the Patriots and stuff like that. And I think in a contract year, I think he's going to thrive. They've added Addison alongside Jefferson. I think that the run game will be strong in terms. I know everyone's talking about Mattison, but they've got a couple of other running backs in there as well. I think they have a good committee. So I think of all the teams that are in the NFC North, the Vikings will be the ones that will push the Lions. And I think, they'll have a good season.
My thing, Johnny, with the Vikings was I always thought they're destined for greatness, but they just can't win the close games. And I think what makes the team great is winning the close games. And they went from, I think, the 2021 season being on the wrong side of them games to the 2022 season being on the right side of their games. There's a lot of people say there was, only a touchdown or less in a lot of games for the Vikings. It was the same for the Lions, and the Lions were on the wrong side of it last year. It continues, and that trend of being on the right side of them scores will happen still.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head. They went, was it 13th and 3 last year? But most of them games were one possession scoreline. So they are a team that can stay in a game, but they're a team that potentially can't see out a game as well. So I think they've made a few changes already this season. They've replaced the old defensive coordinator with Brian Flores, a former Dolphins head coach. I know he spent time on the Steelers a few years ago.
Last year he was the linebackers coach.
Of course he was. So he wasn't defensive coordinator there, was he? He was just part of the.
No, he was the linebackers coach. Yeah,
that's it. Okay. I'm hopeful that he's obviously was at one point a very well thought of head coach. I'm hoping he can bring a bit of experience to the defensive side of things, because I think that's where the struggles lie. We know how explosive they are, or could be on offense with Justin Jefferson. They've obviously swapped Adam Thielen for Jordan Addison, but I think having a strong pass rush that takes a lot of responsibility off what was quite a mediocre secondary last year. I'm hoping that Darnell Hunter, I know he signed a new deal, a new big deal for this year. I'm really hoping he can get back to his best this year. I think it's just fine margins for the Vikings. I still think there are a few pieces missing, but they have some superstars in that team that can win the games on their own. So in those tight games that you mentioned, you want you're really the trenches really to stay in, and that's what they need to improve on from last year, I think.
think any team can do well when you've got the best wide receiver in the league. That's if you've got great players that make great plays at the great times, then I think you're going to do okay. So plus my partner's Vikings fans, so I do take a little bit of an interest in where they're going. So Johnny, you get to talk about either Adam's Green Bay Packers, or you get to talk about, well, I'm not going to say Andrew's Chicago Bears because he's a New York Giants fan, but it's basically his second team these days because of one Justin Fields. So either way, you're going to either annoy or probably annoy one of them. I know, I can guarantee it, because one of them will have something to criticize about each of them teams.
I think I will take a bit of gloating and talk a bit about the Packers. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has now left to join my New York Jets, which is brilliant and has completely revolutionized how fans are thinking in New York. But yeah, the Packers, I think, just going into the unknown in 2023. There's been a lot of chat about how Aaron Rodgers took over from Brett Favre. Who had a losing season, but the season before was a very strong Green Bay team who I think got to the NFC Championship. This is Jordan Love's coming into a team which has a lot of holes and was really poor last year. I think across all sections of the roster, and there's been a little bit of noise. Again, you can't buy into any of the off-season sort of rumors that are coming out of training camp. A lot of them, I think, total media sort of tactics. But there's been Jordan Love hasn't been performing as well as the Packers have hoped so far over camp. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he gets on, just to, because we haven't seen that much of him since he was drafted 3 years ago. So yeah, it's a really intriguing one for the Packers this year. What else? Yeah, they have got the young pieces on wide receiver. I think Christian Watson could become a real stud. Romeo Doubs as well, who was taken late last year. But yeah, I think it's the defense that really struggled last year. We know how many big names they have, like other teams. We mentioned the Browns, and how many big names they have. We saw that the Packers defense really struggled last year, and I think I know that Rashawn Gary was injured for a lot of last year, and from what I've read and what I saw, that really his loss sort of translated into the defense struggling as such. So I think it really depends on whether they can get him back early this year. But yeah, I think this team is loaded on defense, and the Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator, if he can get everything clicking, then that'll make the life of Jordan Love just 10 times easier. But yeah, it could be a bit of a struggle, but who knows? Let's see.
Do you think, Sky, that it's I don't know how to put this. It's not going to be a negative if Packers do badly this season. If actually it could be one of them where let's just risk it this season. Let's just see what we have. Let's just see what we have in this team, because if Jordan Love's not the guy, you go into next draft with two very good quarterbacks coming up. You've got a lot of young players that you can sort of cut loose a little bit and try some new things. Do you think this is just a season that you could write off theoretically if you wanted to try some things?
I think they can try some things and still have a good chance of success simply because of LaFleur's record over 4 years. I had a look, he's got 47 wins and 19 losses. Now, I know a lot of people put that to Aaron Rodgers, but I don't, they've always question marks around how the Packers wouldn't add people in free agency and how they were lacking weapons other than, it was always Devontae Adams only and maybe a bit of Randall Cobb, and they would never go and get a tight end, and they just don't make splashes, right? And I think when you spoke about them having a year where they can sort of see how things work out, they got Watson, they got Romeo Doubs. I mean, Johnny's touched upon the defense. They could probably argue for one of the best pass rushing trios now in the NFC with Gary, Preston Smith, and just drafting Van Ness. So I think they can just open up the playbook on both sides of the ball and see what happens. Like you said, if it doesn't work out, then they're in a good position with next year's draft. And I think even if they have a losing season, but Jordan Love shows some signs of development, they at least know they've got a quarterback of the future and can add to the pieces in the draft through other positions and other means. So I think they can still be quietly optimistic. I wouldn't say the Packers are going to have a bad season. They just obviously need to adjust to this post Aaron Rodgers era.
Post Aaron Rodgers era. Some people never thought they'd see the day, eh, Johnny? Well, Sky, you've got to talk about the Bears. I mean, you got to keep Justin Fields in your good books. Else Andrew, one of our co-hosts and presenter of the Franchise Tag Fantasy Show and involved in the betting show as well, he's going to be very upset with you if you don't big up the Fields here. I'm
a big fan of Fields, mainly because he's been on my fantasy team last year and he carried me some weeks, so that helps. I think I should start. I've always seemed to lean towards talking about the offense, but I think the Bears really made a big statement when they went and got Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. I think that showed, they know there's an opportunity here in the division, right? And then they went and traded for DJ Moore. So I was like, now they're getting a top receiver to go with Justin Fields. And I think that really sort of showed how the Bears are thinking in the long run, something which they haven't done in years before. They've also obviously got Foreman and Roschon Johnson now coming in at running back, now that Montgomery's gone to the Lions. People talking about the rookie Tyler Scott, the receiver, saying that, he could be a breakout star as well. So they've got a lot of their own young players, but I think this is the difference in expectations, right? The Packers has been good for so long, winning so often, that as soon as they drop off a bit, people are, they're going to do great. I mean, the Bears were arguably one of the worst teams because they had 4 wins last year. But they have a chance to really propel themselves up. And I think Justin Fields, in terms of talking him up, I think he could have a Jalen Hurts type sort of arc in terms of where he reaches this season. I think that if the offense really does open up, that's sort of where we could see him at. But it'll be interesting. I think I've talked them up. I've hyped them up, right? I think I've hyped the Bears up pretty well.
I love the whole he could have a Jalen Hurts arc. I think that, I don't know what you've been hearing, Johnny, about how people feel about Fields, but everyone that I've spoken about has gone, we'll need to find out if he can throw. No one has ever said he couldn't throw. No one has ever said that. This is not Lamar here. This is not what Lamar that came in who, theoretically couldn't throw the ball, should be a running back. People have seen Fields throw bombs last year and in college. He can throw, right? I don't get the... I completely agree with Sky. How are you feeling about the comments there?
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. I really like the Jalen Hurts analogy comparison. The Bears front office must have huge confidence in Fields, given how quickly since they've drafted him and he's not developed into the full package yet. We saw really good glimpse of it last year, but just needs to develop as a passer. But they've gone out and obviously on defense, the names that Sky mentioned, Edmonds, Edwards, but they've loaded the offensive line as well. Nick Davis, Dono Wright, they took in the first round of the draft as well. They're really going after it so early because like you say, they can sense an opportunity that this is going to be a wide open division, and I think bringing in DJ Moore in the trade with the Panthers for that first overall pick, he could hold the big key to unlock Justin Fields. I've always thought he's one of the most underrated receivers in the league, perhaps because he's not necessarily played with a high-profile elite quarterback, and he's been on a team that has struggled over the last couple of years. If they can find a partnership, then that's only going to help Justin Fields and help him get to the next stage. So, really excited about the Bears this year. It's Sky said it perfectly. It's so wide open, this division. They can. I've not properly looked at their schedule, but I could easily see them going to the Packers, to the Vikings, and causing a bit of an upset. It's just about making an improvement on this on last year. I think for the Bears. I mean, from a neutral sort of perspective, they've got a lot of money, a lot of picks in the future to really build, and once Justin Fields is in that position, they can make the leap. But really encouraging to see all the business that they've done. Yeah, all the best to them. Yeah, come on the Bears. Hype. I was
going to say very quickly to finish up. Out of the you both have been on the hype train, haven't you? Out of the FC North and the NFC North, or out of both divisions, Johnny, which team would you say you are the most excited to see this season?
That's a tricky one. I mean, I was big on the Steelers earlier, but I think the Lions are the most I'm excited to see, because I think there is the most they have the biggest point to prove, I feel, out of any of the teams, really. Same with the Browns as well. I think it's a big year for them, and I'd love to see their defense and their superstars come out and really make a name for themselves in the North. So I think there are a few teams. I think all these teams that we've talked about have had such so many changes. I think there's not one, I don't think, that hasn't had a quiet off season, or is a team preparing to tank, is in outside of its sort of championship window. These are all teams that are either there or getting there, because they have such good prospects. So yeah, I'll go with the Lions. But yeah, going to be another exciting year for these two divisions.
What about you, Sky? Which team are you most looking forward to seeing play?
This is tough. I don't know. I feel like I've hyped them all up, other than the Steelers.
Oh yeah. No, I don't worry. I'll remember that.
Sorry.
Okay.
I think the Bears, right? We spoke about them a lot. I think I am excited just to see. But I mean, the Lions are number one, because everyone seems to be, they love Dan Campbell, they love this young team. But I think that division is just intriguing, because I think even if the Packers do well now, it's a good story. If the Vikings do, everyone will be like, Kirk Cousins so cool because of that show. And then you got the Lions and Bears as well. So I think all of them. But I would say the Bears from the NFC North, and then from, as much as the Patriots and Ravens have a rivalry, I'm intrigued to see if they can finally make some noise if Lamar's healthy. I think I would like to see him be healthy for a full year and just see how they get on. So I'm excited to see what they can do if they finally open that offense up and sort of let him air it out. So I think that'll be exciting to watch.
Well, thank you, Sky. Thank you, Johnny, for both coming on this evening. We will be returning week on week throughout the whole of the NFL season. It's pretty much hopefully going to be this time every week, but as the season goes by and things happen, times may change. But I'm sure we'll try and be as frequent as we can week on week. We'll be having the NFL betting show also returning on a new day as well, I believe, but that is to be announced. And we are also bringing back the NFL Fantasy Football Show as well. We've had loads of content over the summer. We've been incredibly lucky. We'd like to thank all the people that have hosted the events and the people we've interviewed. We've really seen our numbers skyrocket in things like YouTube. Twitter's been doing fantastic as well. So thank you, all of you, for the ongoing support. And if you want to check out any of that content, please go to our YouTube page or any of our social media channels that have the links there. And it will show you all our content we've done in the summer and all of our content that is coming throughout the NFL season. Thank you again for your continued support through the summer. It has been a long summer. The NFL now is only around the corner. We'll see you again next week.